Good evening. Tonight I am going to talk about the variance of scores and the scatter box charts and so forth. So to start, of course, we want to start with a question, and I simply did what is the variance of scores on the star reading for the cohort from 4th to 5th and then 5th to 6th. Of course, I teach 4th grade, so it's interesting to know kind of what happens and where we are, and do they go up from here? Do they go down, or vice versa, like Dr. Cooper's was the previous years, 3rd to 4th and 4th to 5th. So it's just interesting to see that progression, to see if we are inclining or decreasing. So this was my question. I just put the star test dates to kind of give me, wrap my mind about the dates to ensure I have them in the correct spot, because we're talking about the 4th and 5th graders and where they are each year. But to get started, I want to kind of walk through it because I did have some trouble. And Dr. Cooper was able to help me, and it was a silly, silly mistake. So to start, last week, I was like, I cannot find the combined data. And how silly of me. You can look up here. This is the 9th one. I'm no telling. I don't know how many of these I clicked on thinking it has to be there because I could get the other data, but I was unable to get this. So I was like, it has to be there. Well, fortunately, tonight, Dr. Cooper showed me that really all I need to do was get my arrow up and look at all of the data was sitting there. So last week, I do want to go back and do my comparison charts to see that. But I did pick up this week and cleaned up this chart to be able to work on our the box charts. So to start, I'm just going to minimize this, but I wanted to remind myself that if you don't see the data and you only see zeros and ones because it's enlarged, up to, I'm guessing it was probably 100 or something like that. Something like this is all I ever saw. So I was like, I thought I was going to go crazy because I could not find the data. But fortunately, there it was. I just needed to scroll left, and I knew better. I don't know why I never thought to do that. But lesson learned, and I want to put this on the video so I do not make the same mistake again. But there that is. Here is the question. And on the bottom, I went ahead and kind of kept both of these, all of them open to kind of give us guidance to where I was headed. So this, of course, was just the original I just showed you. I'm going to go ahead and next off now that I have everything I need. And then here's the two that we've been working with. So here is all of it together, but I do want to walk through it. Now, before I ended up with just these 4 columns, of course, I had to go through and decide what columns I wanted and what columns I did not want. Now, something I did want to talk about so I won't forget is, I'm going to scoot these over for just a moment, but how to change when there was multiple numbers in the raw score. I had to ask Dr. Cooper because I could not remember, and I want to put this here so I don't forget, but it was just data and text to columns. So if there's multiple numbers, then of course you want to get that separate before you continue on, especially with the raw score. So that was just data and text to columns to get those separated. That way I could consolidate my columns. Now, of course, after I consolidate my columns, and it was time to make the box plots. Now, to be able to do that, you only need a little bit of information, but you have to go through, like I said, the columns and deleting and getting exactly what you want and the grade levels. Now, I did just scroll and copy, but I do have a question about that. Dr. Cooper, maybe you could answer that. But once I copied from the previous grade, like 4th grade, and then I copied the 5th grade, my question is, would we need to delete the bottom? And the reason I ask is because this is really duplicate information. For this, I left it because I wasn't 1,000% sure, but I think I may need to go back and delete these because these are actually going to be my 5th graders here. These are actually going to be my 6th graders. So that is a question of concern I want to make sure I get addressed before I move on next week. But once we have our 4th to 5th and then 5th to 6th, it's time to do the box plot. Now, the box plot is just simply going to show us kind of that variance, the mean, and all the data that we've been looking at, the different quartiles and the data points. Something interesting that the middle number was very similar in these last 3. And then just slightly a little bit lower in the beginning. So that kind of looks good. Of course, we went up. But as you can see, the upper whiskers are a little higher. But just by looking, you can tell a little bit of a growth. It looked, it's staggered going upwards. So you can see that it did grow. Now, these round are just outliers that cause those percentages to be significantly different. But you can see this is a fairly small gap, but then how much it grows here. And then it goes up a little bit, and then look how small it is here. So if I think about what happened in these 2 years, the scores increased and the variance got smaller, showing that growth did occur. Now, I want to walk through the steps quickly of how to do the box plot just for reference for next time and make sure. So I'm just going to flip back in my notes as well and kind of go through it. Now, of course, we are actually using a different, we're actually using a website to do ours to be able to make those box plots, and it is right here. And it is very simple because all you're going to do is data upload and upload your file. Now, the key is it has to be a CSV before you can upload it. So when you download it and you save as, make sure we're going to save as not the Excel workbook, but as a CSV. And then when you pull that up, it pulls up your data, and then you're able to visualize it. Now, I quickly did the snippet tool to be able to, the snippet tool, of course, that I use regularly for all kinds of things. But I just use the snippet tool to get those images so that way they would be in my presentation and in my slide, inside my workbook all together. So once I save just that data, just the 4 columns, of course, file, save as, and once again, it's a CSV, then all you do is upload it. And then there is your data for you already laid out, and it is ready to go. So, and then there is your data. So I just took that chart and made it all into a new page. And the reason being is because I have had a lot of trouble getting data analysis. So I went back to my original Excel where I knew data analysis would pop up because I know how to add it. Once again, file, options, the add-ins, and walk through it. But of course, it was giving me trouble like it just did just now because it's not responding. So I went and opened my old data, or an older Excel that I knew had data analysis to be able to get the histograms and the descriptive statistics. So just by looking, once again, as this is not responding and I want to move on, I simply color code mine just to keep things from running all together, because the more and more we show, the more and more it runs in. Now, this is just where I was showing the add-in for the VPA, the data analysis. So I do know how to put it on there, but for some reason, sometimes I don't know if it's just I need to get out and restart, but I just went ahead and went back so I could see it. So now once you have, I'm going to make my screen just a little bit smaller. So now once I have my data and I have my box plots, of course, once again, we can look at it. We can add the X and Y titles to know what we're dealing with. And then once again, it breaks it down on the bottom. Now what we're doing is just kind of like, it's just a description. It's not necessarily a comparison because one, the tests are different, but it does give us a descriptive analysis of what's happening, and we can still get, you can see the mean, the average increased over the time, like I mentioned earlier. By looking at the graph, you can tell that. So that's great to know. You would question then, well, what's the difference? What's happening? We could go so forth and so forth, females, males, gender, we could go to ethnic groups and so on. But to make the descriptive statistics, of course, once you have your box plot information, you just would go to your data and data analysis just to refresh your descriptive statistics and go through the steps there. Now, when I look at this, I went ahead and color coded each area because we're comparing 4th to 5th right here and then the 5th to 6th. But I just added a color borders just to help, and all you do is select a course, and when you're on the home screen, you can add the border and you can have the line color and such to just kind of tell the difference. Because once again, if not, I feel like all this just kind of runs together. But once again, you can see here's that median. That's, of course, our middle number. The mode went from 0 all the way to 32. The standard error, standard deviation, you can see how it decreased as we noticed earlier. That's why it seemed to do better, and the whiskers were getting smaller. Of course, some skewedness here. It got very small. If we look here, kind of grew very similar in the middle and then back down. So that's good. So you can just see all that different information, which leads into histograms where we can also supplement our data and do the analysis here just as well as we can with the box plot information. just the graphs, in my opinion, are much simpler to read than just looking at these numbers and trying to figure out what's the mean, the mode, excuse me, and that type of information. So here is our histograms for each grade. You can see the graphs here as well and see how they increase and where the middle number is. Of course, so again, that median here in those items. So in all, it's not that it took a long time. It just, my biggest issue was I simply could not find the combined data to start with. Like I said, I kept thinking I only had one set, and it's very hard to get descriptive and analysis based off just that one section. But thankfully, after talking to Dr. Cooper, I was able to. I just need to remember to always scroll left and right to get all the information. So I am very excited. Like I said, this was just to answer my question of simply, when I go back to it, how was the variance of scores? And we can look right here as well. So how did they vary? What was similar? What was different? And you can clearly see by the different graphs, the histograms, the box plots, the images and the numbers, that what was going on and how it increased from 4th grade and on up. So those kids did increase and they do show growth. You can, like I said, the upper whisker. So that is a plus. But now we still got those few outliers on top and bottom, which could be from that overlay that I mentioned in the very beginning that I need to find out if those would need to be deleted here on the bottom. So in all, once again, I learned a tremendous amount that I had no idea that we had access to or was able to do in any way, shape, or form. So it's been interesting. And I truly look forward, now that I have figured out where the combined data is, I can't wait to kind of go back and look at the previous from last week to see those charts in comparison, because that interests me and I like seeing that. So just a couple items. Like I said, I have a couple graphs, but it was really just to show you where I went. But here is the final, my variances and my box plots information for future reference. So hopefully this will help me in the future. And thank you, Dr. Cooper, for teaching us and leading by example through all the videos. I appreciate it and your help this evening. Thank you.